Hello, world. Let's see. It's been a year and a half since I did this. Um, I stopped doing YouTube streams shortly after the war started in Ukraine, or I should say Europe. Um, Part of that was just how had to do with just how the Europeans and the Americans responded to the cutoff or the threatened cutoff of natural gas and oil resources from Russia, and the way they scrambled around and said, "Oh goodness me, we have to find new resources now. We have to do all this and pull out all the stops and get every type of tanker available and every type of gasification plant spun up and all this kind of stuff." And Germany started burning coal again, and everyone stopped talking about retiring nuclear power plants and so on and so forth. So, I've said on this channel before, and I'm not the only one who says it. All of this talk about that we've been hearing for really like 30 years now. Okay, all this talk of, well, we're going to cut back on our fossil fuel consumption and we're going to go green or we're going to go sustainable or whatever these things mean, right? They're just words. Well, people making word noises about what they're going to do to, staunch the supply of CO2 into the global heating furnace. Okay, you cut off that. They didn't do it. They didn't do it. And as soon as they really had a chance, after the Russian attack was threatening their fuel supplies, uh, the topic didn't even come up. Not only did they not do it at the moment when they really should be talking about nothing else, like, well, we're supposed to be getting off of fossil fuels, so here we go, we're going to do that. There was no such talk. So, okay. And in fairness, the politicians will come back and they'll say, well, you can't talk about disrupting the economy when you have an existential crisis, a war with Russia. Goodness, we can't talk about, you know, hamstringing ourselves when we're at war with Russia. Goodness me, who would even conscience such a thought? We need all of our resources to fight a war with Russia. Or you could say, someone could have said, see, this is what comes from dependency on Russia for fossil fuels. They got you. They're dangling you over the pit, and anytime they want to, they can threaten to cut you off. And so given that situation, you have to do what they want, right? And that wasn't much of that talk either. So it's just obvious to me that this is all just a sham. It's a sham. I'm not the only one saying it. I'm probably the only one on YouTube saying it, because you say things like that, you get demonetized and your videos get black holed in the YouTube algorithm and that kind of stuff. But I don't care. I don't have any followers. No one cares what I think or what I say. So here I am saying what I think. So it's all a sham. It has to be. It has to be a sham. They're never going to cut off their reliance on fossil fuels. They're not going to do that. My wife and I have, casual arguments about this all the time. That they're going to, have our electric cars. Everyone going to have an electric car for every man, woman, and a child in the world. Okay, that kind of conversation, that's meaningless. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They can't do that. And they can't, and they won't. So it's not going to happen. It didn't happen a year and a half ago. There was no conversation about it happening a year and a half ago. Nobody pointed out a year and a half ago that this is what happens when you become reliant on, totalitarian tyrant regimes for your fossil fuels. None of that ever came up. And as of right now, we're more dependent on fossil fuels than we've ever been. I think the consumption of fossil fuel, carbon emissions, the rate of carbon emissions went up another, 10, 12% last year compared to the year before. It not going down, going up, still going up, not going down. And now, of course, we have a stuttering economy. We have food crises in Africa due to the war in Ukraine. And this is not a good time to be, cutting back fossil fuels. We have hyperinflation in many countries. We have high rates of inflation even in the G20 countries. Argentina, which I think is a G20 country, has an inflation rate, an annual inflation rate of something like 150% year on year. And their central bank interest rate, the rate at which they loan money internally in Argentina, their central bank lending rate is something like 90%. So, goodness me, we can't possibly talk about cutting back on fossil fuels. They never will. They're not going to do it. So a year and a half ago, I stopped doing streams. The only thing I ever want to talk about on YouTube is global heating. And, I knew even then, and I know right now, and nothing has changed. It's going to get worse every year. It cannot help but get worse every year. It can only get worse. It can never get better. It can only get worse. It will get worse. Everything will be on the wrong trajectory towards worsening and awfuling and horrifying at every turn. For everything you can measure, anything you'd want to talk about, it can only get worse. I could talk about fires in Canada last week, and I could talk about hailstones coming down in the southern states, the size of pumpkins, and but so what? It doesn't matter. None of these things matter. We can't do it. We can't stop. So we're not going to stop. Nothing here I can say here that will make people understand that we have to stop. But we have to stop. One of the things I like to say is that we will not stop. No one wants to stop. No one will stop. There will be no movement towards stopping consuming fossil fuels. There will be no legislation or talk or concern about stopping our consumption of fossil fuels. None of these things will happen. We'll just consume fossil fuels, pedal to the metal, balls to the walls forever. I mean, that's what they'll tell you. But one day we're going to stop. One day we stop. We stop and we never do it again. You say you're not going to stop. You make it impossible to stop. You make it illegal to stop. You kill anyone who wants you to stop. You harass anyone who wants you to stop burning fossil fuels. And then you stop burning fossil fuels. And why is that? Because that's what happens. That's what happens. And the reason why it happens is something else I've alluded to in other videos. There's two reasons that you eventually stop. One is things on the planet get so bad, so untenable, that either the economy collapses, or people become terrified, or political institutions collapse, or massive wars erupt, or there are massive refugee crises as people become driven out of their homes in entire countries. All these things conspire to disrupt you so badly that you simply can't continue. You just can't put one fossil fuel consumption foot in front of the other. You just get to a point where you just can't do it. The supply chains break down. The delivery supply chains for coal and oil and natural gas are insanely complex. There are entire industries, trillion-dollar profitable industries, that devote themselves specifically and exclusively to managing the supply chain for pumping oil out of the ground, transporting it, digging coal out of the ground, transporting it, fracking fossil methane out of the ground and pipelining that and getting that. And then, of course, all the industries that are devoted to consuming it. Power plants, refineries, entire industry sectors that just need copious amounts of coal and crude oil and natural gas to keep the gears turning over for their particular situation. So that can all break down. That can all just break down. They just can't do it anymore. But the second way where we stop burning fossil fuels and do it abruptly is because there's a bunch of people out there, and this is not This is not a Stargate conspiracy or something, Star Chamber conspiracy or something like that. This is where there are maybe 500 people who run the planet, about that. And they don't belong to the Illuminati or the Templars or the anything else, okay? They're just 500 people from, every nation in the world, mostly, of course, the G20, but pretty much everywhere. There's a rich warlord in Africa who owns enough diamond mines to be in that 500. There's a rich minerals mogul living in Argentina who's got enough under his thumb to be part of that 500. There's 500 people, men mostly, 500 guys who pretty much run the planet. And they don't know they're doing that. But if you were to look at the Venn diagram of all the resources we have to have, all the policies that are being enforced, all the armies, all the large countries, all the wealth, all the financial institutions, and you kind of overlap those in all the ways that they can be overlapped, you're going to find out that they are run or influenced by about 500 people. The way that we end up being off of fossil fuels is that those 500 people or their proxies start talking to each other. Not in any deliberate way. It might actually be at some Davos summit or something like that, where they just kind of start bumping elbows. Say, "Oh, hi, how you been? Oh, got a lot on my mind. What's on your mind? Because I got a lot on my mind. Oh, I'm worried about this global heating, climate change thing. Oh, funny you say that, because I kind of feel the same way. Well, we sit down here and talk about this." And pretty soon there's a third guy. "What are you guys talking about?" It's just climate change. We're just, chewing the fat here. "Oh, that's really been on my mind." Now there's three guys. Pretty soon, enough of these people realize that they got this similar concern that all of a sudden they want to have a conference, and it's not going to be Davos. It's going to be something else. And they're going to just get together on somebody's private island, and they're just going to talk about what's on their mind. And they realize that if they're going to survive, if these 500 people are going to survive, then they have to put an end to the fossil fuel consumption. And one of the reasons they have to do that is that this private island they're on, someplace, has an airfield, and it's got a hotel, and it's got a casino, whatever else. It's 20 feet above sea level is the highest point on the island. And someone's pointing out, probably 3-4 decades from now, this island will be underwater. And according to my advisors who advise me on these sorts of existential threats, there's nothing to stop that. So me, the private owner of this private island where our conference is taking place, I'm already making plans on where I'm going to move myself. And it's going to take me 20 years to do that. And so I have to get started on that now, because I have to get started on that before any of you people start deciding that you need to be someplace else in 20 years. And that's the kind of conversation those 500 people are going to have. And they're going to decide to turn off the fossil fuels. Now, when the Russians attacked Ukraine, and the Germans and the French and the Hungarians and the Romanians and everybody else realized that they were playing footsie with a madman, okay, then they all could have said that. They all could have said, "Well, we got to get off of fossil fuels," but they couldn't, because of politics and economics and other chimpanzee business, chimp business, and so they didn't. But these 500 people, they can do whatever they want, right? Now, each of these people has 6 or 8 advisors. If any one of these 500 people was a government, then these would be like cabinet ministers, right? But they're not. They're private individuals. They run, conglomerates and corporations, and they have, the equivalent of, corporate imperialism going on everywhere around the world. So they got their ministers who advise them. And one thing they'll add to their list of cabinet posts is a minister of survival, essentially. What do I have to do? I've got my guy over here that tells me how to make money every quarter. He's been good at that. I got this other guy over here who tells me how to break into new markets, how to hire armies or, topple governments or whatever to get into new markets. He's been great at that. I got this other guy over here who advises me on security issues what governments are falling apart, which ones are becoming, totalitarian or leftist or what rightist or whatever, so I can move my money around and keep my money safe. And that guy's been good at that. But now I need somebody to tell me how to survive. Simple monkey business, just simple, where's my banana type of thing, right? And so the survivor, the Ministry of Survival, will be telling each of these 500 people. There'll be 500 ministers of survival who will be telling these 500 people how to jump, when to jump, which direction to jump, and all that. And one of the things they're going to hear eventually is this planet is going to become uninhabitable for everybody. Now, money helps, of course. Money absolutely helps, makes a big deal, big difference. Because money gives you mobility, leverage, influence, but money doesn't reduce the temperature of the planet. It can buy you air conditioning, and it can buy you electricity, meaning your own electricity, your own nuclear power plant, your own solar panels, your wind farm, whatever. You can buy all that for yourself and have all that so you can have your air conditioning. But when you go outside, you're still going to be, gasping for air because it's too hot to breathe. So uninhabitable Earth is just not a good thing, even for the wealthy. Now, the Elon Musks of the world and the Jeff Bezoses of the world, they're going to have their private exclusive hangouts on Mars and on the moon. But that's not because that's a better environment, because it's not. You can't breathe the air of those places either. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get away from you. They're trying to get away from you because you're going to lose your mind. And when you lose your mind, they're not going to be safe. So they want to be somewhere far away when all this goes down. And when those 500 people get together at their retreat and they say, okay, we're going to change this situation. And they'll do the due diligence. They'll say, well, what can we do? What kind of technology can we throw at this? Can we remove CO2 from the air? Can we plant more trees? Can we plant different kinds of trees? Can we do something else? How about this other thing? Or maybe this other, have we thought about? Well, who's had luck with this? Okay. And they're going to run that down for a few days, and they're going to have all these scientists come in and all these engineers come in. And these guys are not paid, hopefully. Well, definitely. These guys, they'll all be guys, will not be paid to blow smoke up the ass of the 500 people. The 5 people are going to say, if you lie to me, and I've got lots of experts in here, if you lie to me, you're not getting off this island alive. We'll throw you out to sea, but you'll already be dead. You tell me the truth. I did not hire you to tell me that I'm beautiful and I deserve all the women in the world. I hired you to come here and tell me how this world is going to kill me. And if you don't tell me the truth, you're done. You're finished. You're not getting off this island. That's what they're going to say. Tell me the truth. I don't care what you tell those stupid peons, those mouth breathers, okay? You tell me the truth. And if it sounds terrible, tell me something terrible. If it's going to be terrible, tell me how terrible it's going to be. I want to know because I've got money. I'm not a peon who just has to suffer through it. So why tell me the truth? I'm just going to suffer through it anyway. I can't change my situation at all because I got nothing, okay? So don't tell the peons the truth. Lie to them. That's fine. They're like children. Lie to children. Tell them about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. That's fine. If it gives them peace, then do that. Because I'm one of the 500. I want those people at peace. I want to know the truth because I got the money. And so what they'll hear is the truth. And here's the truth. I've got the truth. And that's fine. I'm willing to share that. I'm on YouTube. There's not going to be anybody watching this video. So it's perfectly acceptable for me to tell the truth. So I will do that. Now, we recently got the truth from James Hansen. James Hansen is former director of Goddard, I don't know, NASA, climatologist, big team of climatologists. And he's the guy that gave testimony before Congress about the climate threat. Al Gore invited him to Congress. They collaborated on that whole thing. And, say what you want about Al Gore, but, he's kind of the real deal. He was there. He did it. He had James Hansen in Congress. And when James Hansen went to Congress, he was working for the government, and he told them that what nearly we knew about the truth at the time, and this would have been based on work done in the 70s and 80s, and the situation, our knowledge of the situation has only gotten worse. Well, he eventually quit NASA. He was retirement age, that's fine, but I think he also probably quit because the government was interfering in the work he was doing. So he quits NASA, becomes a private citizen, but he can still publish papers. He's still a scientist. He can work with scientists. He can work with data, whatever. He published a paper just recently. He worked with a bunch of other people. It's a really long list. He had a long list of collaborators, and they brought together a whole bunch of data from different places looking at basically the question, how bad could it get? So I'm not going to dig into that. Paul Beckwith, also on YouTube, he dug into it, did a fair enough job of interpreting all that data. But at some point, if you keep digging into the data, you're just wasting your time. What's the basic story here? So the basic story is all of our goals to keep the planet at a livable temperature are a farce. There is a mathematical chance, meaning it's not zero. There is a non-zero chance that we could pull this off. We could keep the planet from becoming essentially uninhabitable, but we're not going to do that. There's good reasons why we're not going to do that. Everyone knows the reasons. I say they're good reasons. I don't mean that they're appropriate. I mean they're good. I mean that they're sound. There are sound reasons why we're not going to do any of that. And so we won't. And therefore, essentially, we're screwed. We're just screwed. And that's not dooming. That's just looking at the data, looking at the paleo data, looking at the current data, the satellite data, looking at the trends of the data. Data is going this way, it's going up, and it needs to be doing this, or better still, going down, and it's still going up, and there's no reason for it to stop going up. We know why it's going up. None of those reasons have changed, and so up is the deal. That's the deal now, is up. We are on the Titanic, and the iceberg is right there, and you can't turn right or left. This thing can only go straight at this speed. Turning is a multi-mile event, and we're going to hit that iceberg right there. That iceberg. See that iceberg over there, right there? We're going to hit that. So that was the upshot of James Hansen's latest report, kind of as a private citizen. That iceberg right over there. So that's what's going to happen. Now, continuing with the analogy of the Titanic, there were 500 people on the Titanic who could make sure, guaranteed, that they were not going to go down with that ship. Maybe it wasn't 500. Maybe it was 50. All right, 50 people. The owner of that ship was on the Titanic. It was the maiden voyage. It was a big deal, right? Maiden voyage of the Titanic. He was looking forward to getting off in the harbor at New York and waving to everyone and tipping his hat to all the assembled and being all famous and vindicated. And yes, bring the press, bring the microphones, bring the journalists. And his ship, supposedly unsinkable, said right on the ticket, one berth Titanic, unsinkable. So right there, hit the iceberg and sank. He was on one of the lifeboats. He got off. He got rescued. He made it to, there were lots of other men on that ship that put the women and the children in the lifeboats first. There were crew that didn't get off the ship until all the passengers got off the ship. There were people who sacrificed their lives that other people could survive. And the owner of the ship who made this thing, this floating coffin, made sure he got off the ship. That's what you're up against. That is what we're up against. That's what you're up against. You think that these are people just like you, and they're not. They're not just like you. They're sons of bitches. All right? They're sons of bitches, and they will get off the Titanic. You won't. No one you knows will. No, and they will. So James Hansen came up with this paper. It looks like the iceberg, and we're going to hit it. And you just need to know that. We had that demonstrated to us when Russia attacked Ukraine. Everybody could have got off the fossil fuel train, and they didn't. They could have talked about getting off. They didn't. They could have said, well, this is going to be really urgent. We now have an example of what happens when you buy fossil fuels from tyrants. Then they destroy you with them. That conversation never happened. So we're not going to do it. There you go. And that's why I stopped streaming. It's like, oh, okay. There's nothing more to talk about here. Now, I was listening this morning to Nate Hagens, Hageens. He has a YouTube channel. He has guests and whatnot. And he was saying he was kind of reflecting on his YouTube channel this morning. And you could kind of hear he was like, should I keep doing this? I think he's getting threats. I think he's getting a lot of trolls in his comment section, calling him names and arguing with his viewers, and and you could kind of see him as he was presenting his reasons about, he was basically saying, I'm not sure I'm going to continue doing this. He did say, I'm going to change the format. I'm going to make this more diverse. I'm going to get different types of people on here. But all of that is kind of a way of saying, I'm not sure how this goes forward. I'm not sure how this goes forward. Now, he confessed in that video that he's been doing his channel. He's got lots of subscribers, lots of videos. They're great videos. I watched a lot of them. He has great guests for a year and a half. So ironically enough, he was starting his channel, his YouTube experience, at the moment when I gave up. When I says, I'm not going to do this anymore. Doesn't matter. Now, I don't have followers. I don't have subscribers. No one watches my videos. So it's really easy for me to give it up. Mostly what I was doing here was just, talking through my own thoughts, not having an audience, and just talking to myself, talking to the camera. I think it has helped me organize my thoughts, think clearly. Sometimes if you have to explain something to someone, in fact, most of the time, I have learned, and others have learned as well, that teaching someone or explaining something to somebody else helps you understand it better. There's a part of how we speak helps us organize thoughts for speech that is a better organization than maybe what you start with. So when you have to explain something to someone, you go through a process of, so how do I say this? So how do these things work together? Wait, is that true? Maybe I should check this out. Maybe I should look this up. Okay, now I have some points. Now I think I can communicate this. And you communicate it. And in the process, you clean up the mental clutter in your head about a topic. So, for a year or so, I did these videos, and I feel like it helped. It really helped me clear up my mind about how I feel about these things and what I think about it. Subsequent data has not proven me incorrect on anything at all. Not one single solitary prediction that I made has not borne out to some extent. The major prediction I make and continue to make and have made right here is that nothing's going to change until it does. Nothing can change because it can't change, but it will change. There will be no change discussed. No one's going to talk about change. No one can contemplate change. Change is economically and politically and spiritually suicidal. Can't do these things. Can't have change. And we won't do this. Let's not talk about it. It's not the good time. Think of the children. Think of the jobs. Think of the poor people in the global South. And let's not change. And then we will change anyway. And we will change either because our entire infrastructure collapses under the load of all of the harms caused by global heating, or we will change because 500 people somewhere recognize that their own survival depends on them cutting off the fossil fuels for the rest of us. Now, right now, those people are trying every way in the world to find a way to save their skin without cutting off fossil fuels, because fossil fuels is the gift from the gods, right? It's the gift from the gods. It made all these people wealthy and rich and influential. If they cut it off, they're just nobodies. They're wealthy, influential nobodies. No one wants to. No one's going to care about the Saudis. No, they're not. You'll never hear about them again. You'll never hear about the Saudis ever again when we're all off of fossil fuels. No one's going to hear about the Russians and their great oil fields in Siberia and their natural gas fields. No one's going to hear about them. No one's going to care. Russians, who are those? Oh yeah, Slavic people. Where are they from? Like Manchuria or something? No one's going to know. No one's going to care. No one's going to care about the state of Texas. Texas, yeah, they did something. Have a Lone Star. They have cows or something. What do they got going on in Texas? Oh yeah, they were an oil state in the United States. They did oil. Oh wow, that's interesting. What's oil? Okay, no one's going to care. No one's going to care. Okay, it's gone. And these 500 people they don't need it. They'll have everything they need. And if they can't do it with robotics, they'll do it with slaves. Slaves who are quite happy to be on their island. Yes, sir, master, sir. What do I have to do? Just don't throw me in the sea, sir. Okay? Quite happy to be here. Quite happy to be here without pay, without a career path, without benefits. Oh, wait, the benefit is I'm on your ship. I'm on your island. I'm on your moon base, okay? Whatever. And yes, I do exactly what you tell me to do every time. You ask me to jump, I ask how high. That's our relationship, okay? And, so they'll have people around them, but they won't be real people. They'll just be property. So they don't need us. They'll have their hairdresser, they'll have their security, they'll have their, people that teach their children, or they'll have robots, and the rest of us can go pound sand. And when they decide to cut off the fossil fuels to have a nice, cozy planet for their uses, then that's what's going to happen. So when Nate Higgins was talking about how his channel was 1.5 years old, I was thinking, what was I doing 1.5 years ago? Oh, that's right. I was doing this whole thing. Now, my wife was just reading a story from the newspaper, how this weatherman in Iowa is giving up his job as a weatherman. He works at a news outlet of some kind. He's going to give up his job as a weatherman because he in his professional capacity, he talks about climate change and how that affects the weather. Well, he ought to. That's his wheelhouse, right? He talks about the weather. The weather is driven by the climate. Changes in climate are going to drive changes in weather. Some of those changes are going to be catastrophic, like hail the size of cantaloupes, and tornado outbreaks and hurricanes that are as big as 2 or 3 states, and those kinds of things. Weather. And so he would talk about that stuff, but he got so many harassing emails and comments and whatnot that he basically gave it up. And I have said again in conversations with my wife, because I don't talk to anybody about this, I've said I don't really think anybody should be talking about climate change and global heating. I don't think there should be anybody protesting. I don't like that the cops are hitting young people on the head and dragging them off because they're protesting the creation of pipelines or the extension of runways, in England or something like that. No one should be protesting this. Nobody should be fighting this. It's not worth getting hurt over. It's not worth any threat to yourself. It's not worth any difficulties for your family. If you're a weatherman and you feel obligated because it's your professional responsibility to explain to people how they might be harmed by climate change, don't do it. Don't do it. You don't have to do that. You don't have to explain to people how being on the Titanic and hitting an iceberg could be lethal. You don't have to explain that to them. That's not your responsibility. Don't. Now, if you're among your peers and professionals and you're all going to talk about this, figure out what's really going on or how that affects your job, you can have a conversation with those people, talking shop, as they like to say. But under no circumstances ever would I, as a scientist or an engineer or any of my other capacities, would I be outside my home talking about climate change and global heating to the general public. Never. I would never do it. I would never do it, because I have seen the light. Nothing is going to change. But what will happen is you'll be seen as a threat to their sacred way of life, whatever that means to them. And they don't want to hear it from you. And they know you're just a person. You can be harassed, you can be killed, you can be thrown under a bus, whatever, and then they won't have to hear that from you. Or they can feel like, well, I solved that problem. Well, no, you didn't. All you did was you got rid of a human being. And if I was a human being and I was in the position of having to deal with the public, there's no way I would have this conversation. No, not a chance. And you'll say, well, you have a fiduciary responsibility. if my boss, if I'm a weatherman, my boss comes to me and says, listen, man, you have a responsibility to talk about climate change. I would need for him or her to explain to me why. Why exactly? What are we going to gain from this? And it sounds like a cop out. It sounds like a sellout, but it's not, because I firmly believe there is no conversation we can have that will allow people to contemplate the end of their world. There is no conversation we can have about this that will get them off of fossil fuels. They won't even give up fossil fuels to the extent that they don't get their morning latte at the drive-thru at the Starbucks. They won't even give that up. If Starbucks was to close, and this happened during the 70s, during the Arab oil embargo, they closed, at least here in California, where I was living at the time, they closed the drive-thrus. The drive-through bank, the drive-through pharmacy, the drive-through, well, they didn't have coffee shops at the time. All the drive-throughs were closed because they wanted you, during an oil crisis, a fuel crisis, to park your car, get out of your car, go into the venue, do your whatever, your 5-10 minutes worth of work, and come out. They didn't want you idling your vehicle in the drive-through. They made you get out. They closed the drive-throughs. Now, they did that. They did that. And I don't think anybody was shot over that. I don't think anybody was shot. I'm pretty sure nobody was killed. I don't think any bank managers were killed when they closed the bank drive-through. I don't think any pharmacists were killed when they closed the pharmacy drive-through. I don't think any burger workers were killed when they closed the drive-through at the Burger King. Okay, nobody was killed that I'm aware of. It was certainly not a national phenomenon of people being killed over not being able to drive through. But that was the 70s. We were different people back then. Now, if you were to close all the drive-thrus in California, it would be a running gun battle. It would be bullets in the streets. Not a joke. You couldn't do it. We can't have that conversation. Now, you may want to do a meta-analysis, say, that's interesting. Why can't we have that conversation? That would seem like a nice conversation to have. That seems like a simple thing. How is that a threat to anybody? Why would anybody go bomb the Starbucks just because they closed the drive-thru? Well, it doesn't even matter. Get all meta if you want to. I'm not going to do that. We can't have this conversation. We can't. And we're not going to. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, and finally the Europeans were put up against their failure to act on their fossil fuel consumption patterns in the past, and now the day has come, the day of reckoning, they just didn't talk about it. No conversation of any type. Right? No meaningful dialogue about how did we get here? How do we get out of this mess? How do we go forward? Nothing. Zip. Nothing. We can't talk about this. And if I'm a weatherman in Iowa and I'm feeling like it's my wheelhouse, it's my responsibility to educate people about the threats of global warming and climate change, global heating and climate change, and I'm really sincere of this, and maybe I'm a young enough person that I kind of grew up with a little bit of this, and I'm really concerned about it. I have been since I was a teenager, so now it's my chance to, be the superhero and step out there on camera and educate these people. Okay, don't do it. Do not do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth your life. It's not worth your family's well-being. Don't do it. And don't protest a new pipeline. Don't do anything. Nobody has stopped anything from happening in a meaningful way. We can't even stop infrastructure projects. Now, the 500 that I've alluded to, they could do that. They can have this conversation. They can talk about how all of this is a threat to them personally. 500 people, all equally wealthy. Each one can call in a nuclear strike on the other, not a joke. And they're all peers. They all get along. Their kids all go to the same schools, and they're having this conversation, and they're looking at the future. And they don't use the drive-through at the Starbucks. They have in their mansion, they have their own barista who works full-time for them, who will bring them their custom-made coffee to where they're sitting in their house anytime they want one. So for them, the question of can we have drive-throughs or not is not even a topic. They just don't care. And for them, for those people, surviving a curtailment of fossil fuel consumption is child's play. Nothing happens to them. But surviving global heating is a real challenge and could be absolutely lethal. So for them, they don't have to worry about their job and their career and their kids' college fund and all that stuff. These are not even issues for them. Their only issue is how do I survive this planet going to 5 or 8 or 10 degrees C above pre-industrial baseline temperature? All right, how do I survive this? Where am I going to be? They're already asking these questions. They're already asking which part of the world should I be in when this happens? Which part of the world should I be in when the endless streams of refugees start to move across the planet? Which part of the planet should I be on when there's crop failures everywhere else, and arable land is being overrun by refugees? Where am I going to be? Where should I be? That's the question they're asking right now. Some of them are solving that question by building rockets to Mars. Okay, I guess that's one possible answer. But it's not an issue for them apart from where am I going to be? What island do I have to buy? What walls do I have to build? How big of a cruise ship do I have to build for myself to be okay? They can contemplate that life. They can contemplate a life without fossil fuels. They can contemplate a life far removed from the crises that are going to happen when this planet gets to 2 degrees C above baseline. They also are in a position to turn off the fossil fuel extraction industry. All of it. Just turn it off. Now, they'll do the fandango. They'll try to throw technology at it. They'll try to throw money at it. They'll try and throw, 5,000 years of human innovation at it. But eventually they're going to come down to this, so there's no guaranteed path that saves us, the rich people, the people who matter. There's no path that saves us from a planet that is 10 degrees C, 30 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it should be, okay? There's no path. There's no guaranteed path to save us, the rich people of the world who matter, from that. And some of them are going to be getting whispered advice from their minister of survival. Boss, we could just shut off the fossil fuels. Oh, but that's where the money comes from. Yeah, but survival. How much more money do you really need? You already own half the planet. Just find the part on it that's best for your survival and get there and bring me and my family with you, okay? And so those 500 people are going to sit around and they're going to decide, yeah, we got to shut it off. And for them, it's trivial. You can't do that. I can't do that. We can't even have that conversation. We can't even talk about closing the drive-throughs at the Starbucks, okay, without storming the Capitol, all right? But they can have that conversation. They don't care what happens at the drive-through. They don't care what happens at the ball game. They don't care if people can't fly across the country 3 times a year. They don't care if people can't get to Disneyland 3 times a year. They don't do those things. And they can turn it off. They can turn it off. They can do that. And when the Russians attacked Ukraine, the German government and the EU as a whole could have turned it off. They could have turned it off. They could have said, well, that's the end of that. We're supposed to be ending it anyway. And here's our chance. Let's just turn it off. What do you say? Give it a try. We'll give it a year. We'll see what we can do. Deadlines are sometimes exactly what you need. Sometimes you need a crisis. It's just turn it off. Whatever. Let's see what happens. We're innovative. We're all unified. We're all smart. Turn it off. Let's see what we can do. They didn't do that. But the 500 richest people in the world who actually run the world, they can do that. And here's how they do that. It's real easy. A child of 5 can do this. Bring me a child of 5. I can't get anybody else to talk to me. If you bring me a child of 5, maybe we can figure this out. A child of 5 can turn off the entire fossil fuel industry. Turn it all off. Child of 5 can do this. Here's how you do it. You take your child of 5, call him Timmy. Timmy, come over here, Timmy. This is an oil field. You see all these pumps going up and down like this? Do, 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 do. Kind of funny looking, aren't they? Timmy, pay attention. Okay. See all those things? They're all run on electric motors, all of them. I want you to go to each one of them. You'll find a box. It's about that big. It's about that high. And it's got some buttons on it. You can ignore the buttons. There's a big switch. Yeah, it's like a light switch in your house, remember? But it's big. Okay, maybe 2 hands on it because you're only a little kid. 2 hands. Pull that switch down. Jump on it if you have to. Bounce on it. Clunk. It'll fall down. When it falls down, the electricity is turned off, and that thing going up and out, it'll stop. Now, you go to every pump in this oil field, and you grab that lever, and you pull that thing down. Child of 5 can do this. Child of 5 can do this. After you're done with that, we're going to go visit all the coal mines and, the drills and the hydraulics and the coal cars and the everything, the conveyor belts, it's all electric. And all the cables and all the overhead transmission lines and all this stuff, it's all electric. Somewhere in there, there's a big panel. It's about that big, it's about that high, and it's got a bunch of buttons on it. You can ignore all that. There's a switch. Okay, Timmy, you grab that switch and you pull that switch down, just like all those others you did. Oh, you jump on it, clunk. Yeah, child of 5 can do that. It's off. Send all those men home. Yeah, we're done, guys. Go home. Here's your severance pay. Okay, figure your life out. Go home. Not doing this anymore. Go to the fracking field. Same story. Find the box with the switch on it. Clunk. Done. You're done. Good job, Timmy. Now, if we do all these, take time. The child of 5 can do this. After we've done all this, go around, we turn them all off, then we're done. Now you say, well, that's going to cost a lot of people jobs. Yes, those people don't matter. Okay, but that's going to implode the global economy. Yeah, but the global economy doesn't matter. Well, that means people can't buy food and gasoline and heat their homes and cook their food. And, that's true, but those people don't matter. There's 500 people in the world that matter. And they planned this whole thing, and they've got everything figured out, and they know where they're supposed to be, and they're already there. And the only one who isn't safe from the masses is Tiny Timmy, 5 years old, child of 5. His job to go turn all these things off. And who wants to hassle a little 5-year-old kid? No one's going to do that. So, child of 5 is out there ending our dependency on fossil fuels. Simple as that. Turn it off. Yes. So they can do that. There's no innovation required. There's no technological change required. There's no politics required. There's no policy required. There's no voting. There's no UN. There's no Security Council. There's no war required. Now, it doesn't mean you won't have war. You probably will. But without fossil fuels, what kind of a war would it be, right? Good point. What kind of a war could we even have without fossil fuels? That puts a kibosh on all that, doesn't it? So they can do this. They can do this. And where will the refugees go without fossil fuels? How can they cross the Mediterranean into Europe without boats that have fossil fuels? Well, they could sail. Yeah, that's true. They could. How do you cross the landscape when it's 130 degrees outside and there's no rail and there's no airplanes and there's no cars and there's no anything? People can't go anywhere. They have to stay in place. And they're going to figure it out. We've got some dirt here. We've got some seeds. We've got shovels. We got enough water for irrigation. Let's see if we can start ourselves a little agricultural commune. They can figure that part out, right? Done that before. We've been there before. And we spent more time as humans without fossil fuels than with, right? And if you're paying attention and you're keeping score, you'll say, okay, well, yeah, but that was back when there was maybe 100 million or 200 million humans, not 8,000 million. 8 billion is 8,000 million, just in case you didn't know. We were 100 million humans on Earth, maybe 200 tops back before fossil fuels. And now you're talking about 8,000 million. And those people, they're not going to feed themselves with a shovel. We need combine harvesters, and we need thousands of acres in production, and we need plows that are 40 feet wide, tilling the soil, and we need cattle and cattle cars, miles long trains of cattle cars moving cattle to the slaughterhouses, avocados from Ecuador and coffee from Peru, and that's how we're surviving now. We don't pick up a shovel and go out and work the soil. What are you talking about? You can't feed 8,000 people that way. Well, I guess we'll find out if you can feed 8,000 people that way, won't we? Because the 500 people in the world who matter don't care if you're getting your coffee from Peru and your avocados from Ecuador or anything else. The 1,000 things a day you depend on don't have to be delivered. And the 10,000 things that you like to have won't be delivered. Not your shoes, not your pants, not your toothpaste, not your insulin, not your acetaminophen, nothing. Your tampons, and nothing. And that 18-wheeler that goes to your Whole Foods or your Trader Joe's or your Target or your Costco and disgorges its contents into the store at 3 o'clock in the morning, that 18-wheeler, it's not going anywhere. And, the shelves will be bare and people will have knocked down all the doors and stolen everything out of there anyway. And you know how people are. Give me my Cheetos, goddammit. Give me my bottled water. Give me my $2 chicken, rotisserie chicken. Come on, where is it? You owe it to me. It's America. I got rights. What do you mean I can't have my $2 rotisserie chicken? That's communism. Don't you understand freedom? Give it to me. I didn't want to pay for it. Give it to me. Your attitude, you got a bad attitude. I want to pay for my $2 rotisserie chicken. I want you to give it to me right now. You owe me. Just for being dirty about it. So yeah, those 500 people scattered over 500 different places in the world, they're just going to sit back and just watch us do what we do. As we winnow ourselves down from 8,000 million to what? 80 million? 8 million? What do you think? 1%? A half of a percent? A tenth of a percent of the population? Because without your Starbucks drive-through and your Costco and your Whole Foods and your Trader Joe's and your, KFC and all that, you're going to be storming the Capitol. And maybe even with reason. You're hungry, possibly. Wow, I'm hungry. I'm worried about not having food. They just said they shut off the fossil fuel. I went down to my store. The shelves are mostly empty. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm protesting. I'm storming the Capitol. Where's my food? And meanwhile, of course, the politicians who had the high sign, they've hightailed it, gone back to their districts, or disappeared up into the mountains, or went off on a long vacation to Maui, or whatever they're going to do. They saw the signs and they understood that it was over and it was done. And the 500 have said, yeah, we're finished. We're done feeding you people. You got to feed yourselves. And, we're shutting it off because we don't want to live in a world that's 5 degrees C above baseline. We don't want to live in a world that's 10 degrees C above baseline. We don't even want to live in a world that's more than 424 parts per million of CO2, which is where it currently is. 424, that's it. That's all you're going to get. You don't get 425. At least of all 500 or 1,000. Okay, forget that. That noise is not happening. But we can turn it off. So we will. And we'll sequester ourselves on our mountaintops or in our mega yachts floating out at sea or our private islands. They'll buy Hawaii. They'll kick everybody off of the island. They'll just buy Hawaii and they'll set up their massive condominiums and have food flown in from private farms around the world, and they'll be fine. Come on. You got nothing to worry about. There's nothing to stop them from doing this. And they'll do this. And I know nobody wants to talk about doing this. 5 little words. Leave it in the ground. No, can't do that. Can't do that. Not going to do that. Russia attacking Ukraine, that didn't do it. We didn't have the conversation. James Hansen came out with his report saying that, okay, if you're not going to do this and this is where you're headed, it's looking bad. It's looking like the Titanic hitting the iceberg. You're all going to go down. Some of you are going to survive. Most of you will die. Is that enough to stimulate conversation? No, of course not. Of course it won't be. And if you're a middle-class weatherman living in Iowa trying to get people to talk about global heating and the coming catastrophe, they'll send you hate mail and they'll threaten your wife and kids and they'll graffiti your house and they'll spray paint your car in the parking lot and You have to quit and leave and go someplace else, go in some other country. Or you just not have that conversation at all. Just don't have the conversation. Just don't have the conversation. They don't want to hear it. They're threatening to kill you for being the messenger. They're going to kill the messenger. Well, that always worked. They're going to kill the messenger. They don't want to hear about it. Don't talk about it. You don't have to talk about it. Well, I have to talk about it so that people are prepared. You don't have to prepare people for that. People won't even stop smoking. Okay, people won't take the first effort to save themselves from a crisis. They won't do it. You talk till you're blue in the face. They won't do it. You can talk to them until you're blue in the face about their personal lifestyle choices, about their onset of diabetes, about their obesity, about their addiction problem. You can talk to people till you're blue in the face about their personal problems that are a threat to their continued existence, and they will ignore you. That's how people are. Any threat that isn't an actual gun held to their actual head is not a threat. And global heating is no different. And no one should lose their job trying to convince these chimps that they're in trouble. There's just no reason to do that. No scientist should be threatened by a mob who wants their head on a pike because they said something or published something about global heating. There's no reason for that. Now, if you want to do the research and you can get the grants and you can get published and you can do these things and that's your career, then and you feel good about yourself for doing that, you fought the good fight, you did the work, you published the data, it's out there. If people want to read it, maybe they'll understand better their situation, maybe they'll rise up and they'll try to save themselves. Okay, you can have that attitude, all that's going on in your head, you're doing this for the right reason, and maybe that's why you do it, so you feel good. But you can't do it because the chimps are going to act differently. Because they're not. They want their Starbucks, they want their Costco, they want their $2 rotisserie chicken, they want their Disneyland, they want the fly back to Connecticut, they want their second home in Tahoe. These are all things they want. Oh, by the way, to feel good about all that, they want their electric car, their electric house, they want carbon offsets, they want to plant a tree, they want to do this, all this other stuff. And they want politicians to talk the talk. And they don't want to have anybody to walk the walk. They just want to be left alone, live their life, have their pleasures, and not be concerned about global heating. So don't bother them about it. Nobody has an obligation to do that. I can do this because I know no one's going to watch it. And even if they do, who am I? I'm not a name brand scientist. I don't have a publication record. I'm not on Oprah. No one knows who I am or where I am or what I'm talking about. I'm fine. I can do this. No threat to me. But if you're the weatherman or you're James Hansen or you're Nate Higgins with your YouTube channel, maybe you can't. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe it's not a good idea. Okay. So I'm surrendering to the trolls. I'm just giving up and I'm letting the loudmouth cretins run the show. So what? The loudmouth cretins have always run the show. Democracy works as well as the dumbest person, not the sharpest. Okay? The bell curve of intelligence means there's a small percentage of people at the far end of the curve who are intelligent. There's a number of people at the other end of the curve that are clinical morons. Okay. Everybody else in the middle is at best average. Those people have average thoughts about even simple things. And they know what they want. They know what they have. They know their patterns of their life. They're just going through the motions every day, getting the kids to school, getting to the grocery store, getting the dry cleaning done, making my quarterly quotas at the work, at the office, whatever I have to do. And they're just doing this thing in a pattern every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year. It's the same. And they reward themselves once in a while with a trip to Disneyland or with a new car or, a vacation in France or something like that. They just go through the motions every day, and then they have a periodic reward for that. And that's most of the population. That's 95% of the population. And global heating is just not comprehensible to them. It's just not comprehensible. They cannot comprehend it. And there aren't too many scientists that really comprehend it. They have their little piece that they look at in great detail and, for 30 years of a career, looking at this tiny little piece. And then there's a few like James Hansen and his teams that can, see the bigger picture. But even that, we're studying a system we don't comprehend. So even if you have a big picture view, you have a big picture view of something that's really grainy and blurry, and you're seeing a lot of it, but it's just what there's no details. I don't understand how these things connect, and this thing did that, and this other thing did something else. And this whole system science is really hard, very difficult. I was a system scientist. I studied ecosystems, and man, I can tell you, you get into the weeds really fast. And you try to say something important, something useful, and it's like really hard. And you have to do all this math, and people are scratching their head. What kind of math is this? And well, it's the only tool we have to talk about big systems. We have to do all this numerical analysis and finding principal components and all this stuff. And they're like, what? Glazing over. Well, yeah, if you're a fellow scientist, all that stuff has meaning to you. It doesn't have any meaning to anybody else. There's not many people that do it. I can tell you, there's not many people do it because it's hard. And it's not rewarding. And sometimes you run into things that look really ugly and really bad. And if you're a weatherman, you have to go on TV that night and talk about something. So what are you going to talk about? Well, there's a cloud front coming in, and it's a bow cloud, and there's going to be 40-mile-an-hour winds, and look out for the hail, and tomorrow will be sunny. And you can talk about that, right? Because that's just phenomena. There's the clouds, there's the hail, there's the lightning, okay? You can talk about phenomena, or you could try and talk about system science. It's the global heating, and it's the CO2, and it's 424 parts per million, and it's going up, and it's because of the CO2 emissions, and that's because of fossil fuel consumption and all the dependencies on fossil fuel consumption. That's why we can't stop, and we have to burn more every year because there's more of us every year. We want to do more things every year, and we're going to biggering and furthering and fastering, and it's just out of hand completely, and you can't talk about that on a 30-second weather update. And if you just try to say something simple like, well, I've been talking about the weather all week. I just want to point out today, while we have an extra few seconds on my segment today, that, weather is driven by climate, and the weather is the average of your climate. And, you have certain expectations for weather based upon your local climate, but the climate is changing. As we know, there's this thing called climate change. It really is, though. It's global heating. There's more energy being packed into the system. And the weather is dependent on energy. The wind moves because of energy. The rain falls because of energy. The hail gets bigger and bigger because of energy. The tornadoes are energy. The hurricanes are energy. The storm surge is energy. And the more energy you pump into the system, the more these things can happen. And you want to call it weather, and that's fine. It is weather. But the changes you're seeing in your weather, the increasing impacts, the increasing amount of weather, the more often you say, well, this was interesting, or this is going to be dangerous, or this is something to avoid, the more we have to say these things, people are going to ask, why? Why do we have to avoid this? Why is this going to be dangerous? Why is this a particularly bad tornado outbreak? Why are these hurricanes getting bigger? Why is this storm surge happening more often? Why are our streets flooding? Why did it rain 50 inches in 24 hours when it's never done that before? Why did it do this 3 years in a row? Why is it so dry? Why are there so many fires? Well, people don't ask questions like that. And they pitch it to the newsman. Okay, weatherman, people are asking, what do you got for us? What are you going to say? You could say, well, natural variation, it's just weather, folks. Come on. Toughen up, buttercup. It's weather. You all know weather. It hails, it lightnings, it storms, there's tornadoes, there's hurricanes, there's storm surges, there's, the rain comes down. Sometimes it comes down in sheets. It's weather. What do you want me to say? Oh, I see. You want me to mention something about climate change? I'm not doing that. I could. I go to conferences all the time, as a weatherman. We go to conferences, professional development. We go to these conferences. We talk about weather. We talk about climate change, global heating. We get all the charts, all the directions, and the lines going up and down, and the future and what it all foretell, for how it can all be foretold. But when I come back to the newsroom, I don't talk about that stuff. Yeah, it's weather. Stay out of it. Stay away from it. Make sure you have a tornado shelter, someplace where you can hide underground, like a little squirrel. Hide yourself like a squirrel. Because compared to weather, that's what you are. And if you don't have air conditioning, you better get air conditioning, because it's going to be 130 degrees one of these days. And, I can say that. I can say it's going to be 130 degrees. It might only be 130 degrees for 2 or 3 days, and then it'll go back to being normal, 110. But still, you should probably be prepared, because that's the weather that's coming. Eventually, it's going to be here. You could say that, but you'd probably be better off not saying it. That's weather. We got hail coming. Projection is it's going to be the size of grapefruits, or maybe cantaloupes, big 7 inches across hail. Probably should not be outside, be my guess. Probably shouldn't be in your car, would be my guess. Just, tough it out. If you can get underground, that's probably sensible. Just be underground. And if you don't have an underground shelter, then, wear a bike helmet or something. Wear a helmet. Pull the mattress off the bed, just get under the mattress. And when the hail comes through the roof of your house, you'll be okay. Probably. Most likely. It's just weather. None of us has any obligation to explain to people why it's happening this way. And when the 500 wealthiest and most influential people on the planet decide that they don't like the direction this is headed, and they decide to somehow orchestrate a shutdown of the fossil fuel industry, whether through war or subterfuge or dirty politics or whatever, they'll do it. They'll do it. They'll do it to save themselves. And you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about doing anything. They will do it. They will do it. They absolutely will do it. They can, and they will. And it doesn't require any technology. It's so easy, a child of 5 could do it. A child of 5 backed up by, a large military, whatever it takes to actually pull that off. Anybody can do it. Little kid can do it. So it's been a year and a half. I don't know why I'm doing this. It doesn't make any sense. Not the best use of my time. But I was inside and I wanted to have a cup of coffee, so thought I would do this. Good luck to the weatherman in Iowa. Good luck to the climate scientists who are trying to get the word out, help people understand their situation. Good luck. Good luck to all those people, on board the Titanic that didn't know they were going to be going to the bottom of the ocean. We're all in the same boat now, really, frankly. And I guess we'll see what happens, because there's nothing can be done about it now. Really nothing. There's nothing can be done about it. Do whatever you want. I mean, whatever makes you feel better about yourself. But there's really not much can be done about it. No, that's not true. It's not true to say there's not much can be done about it. There's nothing can be done about it. All we have to do is just wait for the day when the 500 wealthiest and most influential people in the world decide that we, the nobodies, can't have our fossil fuels anymore. Just wait for the day and they will shut it off. They'll shut it off, or they'll just let us go berserk. They'll be on their mountaintops and out on their mega yachts and on their chalets in the Swiss Alps, and they'll just watch us from afar as we do what it is we will inevitably do. And there won't be 8,000 million more of us. We'll be maybe 8 million, plus the 500, and plus whatever retinue they have to have. Their private people, their personal people, right? The 500 plus their 5,000 or 50,000 that they need to work for them. And then the 8 million of us who actually survived the ending of civilization on Earth. Be where you need to be and with whom you need to be with is my advice.